From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
On this vote, the yeas are 60, the nays are 40. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative, the motion is agreed to.
In a 1 a.m. vote, the Senate breaks a Republican filibuster and takes a major step toward passing a health care bill. The legislation has no public option, no expansion of Medicare eligibility, and includes restrictions on the use of federal funding for abortions. We'll talk to Salon blogger Glenn Greenwald. Then after a closed-door session in Copenhagen, President Obama announces a non-binding agreement on climate change.
It will not be legally binding, but what it will do is allow for each country to show to the world what they're doing, and there will be a sense on the part of each country that we're in this together.
We'll speak with Guardian columnist George Monbiot and with China expert Lucia Green-Weiskel. And we'll speak with the president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, about climate change. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The UN climate talks in Copenhagen have ended in failure as world leaders couldn't agree to a binding deal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Instead of reaching a global consensus, the U.S., China, South Africa, Brazil, and India met behind closed doors and drafted a non-binding document known as the Copenhagen Accord. The agreement seeks to limit global warming to a maximum of a 2 degrees Celsius rise in temperature, but it does not specify targets for cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. President Obama described the non-binding deal as an unprecedented breakthrough.
For the first time in history, all of the world's major economies have come together to accept their responsibility to take action to confront the threat of climate change. After extremely difficult and complex negotiations, this important breakthrough lays the foundation for international action in the years to come.
Delegates from around the world announced the U.S.-led deal as an undemocratic sham that sacrificed the interests of poor countries. Lumumba Stanislas Diaping, the chair of the G77 group of developing countries, compared the agreement to the Holocaust. Friends of the Earth President Eric Pica described the U.S.-led climate deal as a cover-up. On Friday night, climate protesters rallied in Copenhagen, where they carried torches forming the word shame. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside the site of the talks and chanted, "Climate Justice Now." This is Bill McKibben, co-founder of 350.org. Meanwhile, in Australia, 23 protesters were arrested Sunday after shutting down the railway line leading to Australia's biggest coal export facility. Activists from the group Rising Tide Newcastle stopped a coal train and chained themselves to it and the rail tracks to effectively close the train line for 6 hours. On Capitol Hill, Senate Democrats have moved a step closer to passing a major health care bill. Early this morning, the Senate voted 60-40 to cut off a Republican filibuster. The votes put the legislation on pace for final passage later this week. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid accused Republicans of trying to stall the vote.
This is not about partisanship or about procedure, and everyone knows. We're here at 1 o'clock in the morning because of my friends on the other side of the aisle. For them to say with a straight face, and I noticed some of them didn't have that straight face, that we're here because of us is without any foundation whatsoever, and everyone knows that.
The early morning vote was the first test of whether Democrats could secure the 60 votes needed to overcome unified Republican opposition. Democrats were assured of victory on Saturday after their last holdout. Senator Ben Nelson agreed to a compromise ensuring federal funds would not be used to pay for abortions. Unlike the House health care bill, the Senate legislation does not call for the creation of a government-run public insurance option. On Sunday, Senator Russ Feingold of Wisconsin blasted the Obama White House for showing a lack of support for the public option. Feingold said, quote, "I've been fighting all year for a strong public option to compete with the insurance industry and bring health care spending down. Unfortunately, the lack of support from the administration made keeping the public option in the bill an uphill struggle." We'll have more on the health care bill after headlines. A new study on healthcare lobbying published in the Chicago Tribune found healthcare companies have spent $635 million on lobbying over the past 2 years. At least 166 former congressional aides involved in shaping healthcare legislation have registered to lobby for healthcare companies. This includes at least 14 former aides to House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer and at least 13 former aides to Montana Democratic Senator Max Baucus, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. ABC News is reporting the U.S. military bombed 2 sites in the Middle Eastern nation of Yemen Thursday on direct orders from President Obama. The strikes are seen as a major escalation of the Obama administration's campaign against al-Qaeda. U.S. officials told ABC the target of the strikes was a pair of suspected al-Qaeda training camps. A human rights activist in Yemen said 23 children and 17 women were among the 64 people killed. Earlier this month, President Obama hinted that Yemen could soon be attacked. On Capitol Hill, the Senate has approved a $636 billion military spending bill that continues to fund the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The measure was passed by a 88-10 vote. Democratic Senator Russ Feingold of Wisconsin was joined by 9 Republican senators in opposing the bill. The bill includes $80 million to acquire more unmanned Predator drones to allow the Obama administration to expand the air war in Afghanistan and Pakistan. In Iran, tens of thousands of people turned out today for the funeral of the Grand Ayatollah Hossein Ali Montazeri, one of Iran's most prominent dissident clerics. Montazeri was a fierce critic of President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and called his re-election a fraud. Meanwhile, an Iranian military court has determined at least 3 Iranian political prisoners were beaten to death by their jailers following June's presidential election. On Saturday, 3 Iranian jail officials were charged with murder. The mother of one of 3 American hikers detained in an Iranian prison has posted an online video plea for their release. It's Nora Shor, the mother of Sarah Shor, who urges Iran's supreme leader to release the 3 Americans who've been detained since July. Israeli authorities have arrested a prominent Palestinian activist who's organized protests against the construction of Israel's separation wall through the West Bank. Jamal Juma has served as the coordinator of the Stop the Wall campaign since 2002. Another prominent West Bank anti-wall activist named Abdallah Abu Rahma was reportedly taken from his home by masked Israeli soldiers earlier this month. A third anti-wall campaigner, Mohammed Othman, has been held by Israel for 3 months. Human Rights Watch is calling on the Obama administration and the Senate to step up efforts to ratify the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. 186 nations have ratified the Global Women's Rights Treaty since it was signed 30 years ago this week, on December 18, 1979. Only the United States, Iran, Sudan, Somalia, Palau, Nauru, Tonga have not ratified it. An investigation by New American Media has found that loans handed out to struggling small businesses as part of President Obama's stimulus package have largely shut out minority businesses, especially those owned by African Americans and Latinos. Over 91% of the special small business loans went to white-owned businesses. 3% went to Latino-owned businesses, just 1.5% to black-owned firms. Overall, white-owned businesses received over $130 million in loans through the program, while Latino-owned businesses got $4 million and black-owned businesses less than $2 million. In 5 states, Alabama, Arkansas, New Hampshire, South Dakota, and Wyoming, every single firm that received a loan was white-owned. In 8 other states, including Louisiana and Nevada, all but 1 loan went to a white-owned firm.